Since the fall of man, a war has raged between good and evil. Over the centuries, this war has distorted the truth. Now the truth is perceived as lies, and lies acknowledged as truth. To this day, the battle continues as we investigate and debate the truth behind the history and mystery of the universe. We are Paratruth Radio. Paratruth has always said that Ouija boards are devices that open doors to evil entities. And nothing has yet changed our opinion. Instead, our views are only strengthened, especially when hearing about an entity that we call the Ouija demon. Now Paratruth presents Zozo, the Ouija demon. What's up, folks? My name is Eric.
And I'm Justin.
And you are listening to the one and only Paratruth Radio. We are, again, live and happy to be here. Yeah, you agree?
It was a nice week off.
Yes, indeed, I agree completely.
And for those of you that would say, you guys just started a network, why'd you take a week off? Guys, we've been doing this for almost an entire year nonstop. I don't think we took a break at all this year, if I'm not mistaken.
Nope.
So
no, we haven't.
I think we needed at least a week break.
And for those of you that say I've had like 2 over the past year, that's not fair statement. I was still working, just not on the radio.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, today's episode, and Justin and I say this at the beginning of every episode, this is probably one of the most interesting topics that we're going to cover here on Paratruth Radio.
Yeah.
Again, we say that all the time, but it's true. A lot of these topics we think really are the most interesting as we speak of them. And the next week there'll be something even more interesting.
Right.
But this one kind of goes in hand with some things you've talked about in the past. In particular, the Ouija board. The Ouija board is something that many mystics, mediums, everyday people like to use to try and conjure up the dead. In particular, speaking to deceased family members, or when I was a kid, it was animals, dead animals, imaginary friends. Believe it or not, kids do try to use Ouija boards to contact their imaginary friends. You name it, it's really a device that's used originally for a game. It was meant to be a game, but it's transformed to be used by spiritists and mediums to conjure up the dead, or everyday people to conjure up the dead and talk to their relatives. And unfortunately, that's still happening today, except instead of these so-called dead relatives appearing, there's something a little more sinister showing up. And it's only got more and more recent over the years that this particular character we're speaking of is a demon known as Zozo. Now, there's no biblical words talking about Zozo. There's no evidence biblically. There's very little evidence in pretty much most writings that talk about a demon named Zozo. But there are demons that have been named. If you look at the Lesser Key of Solomon, there are 72 demons in there that have been named, none of which that I recall are named Zozo. But
that doesn't mean they don't name themselves either.
That's true. It doesn't mean that they don't name themselves. For all we know, this demon named Zozo might not even be his real name. He might just be going by Zozo through the Ouija board, but has a completely different name. We do know that all angels and demons do have names. The Lord named them when they were all angels, and when Lucifer fell, and he took down a third of the angels with him, who were basically walking behind him or marching behind him, Lucifer was a leader in heaven, and when he fell, those that were following him fell with him by their own free will and their choice at the time. And there's probably millions of these demons that are roaming the earth right now. So virtually, and actually it's literally impossible to know the name of all these demons ourselves. Only God knows that. But the Zozo demon is definitely quite intriguing, if you ask me.
Yeah, it's one that I actually hadn't really heard of this until I was listening to another podcast and the name came up. So, doing the research, I was kind of interested, and the more I read, the more it's linked to the Ouija board than anything else, because it does go back to the 1800s, but after that, it's always linked to the Ouija board.
Mm-hmm. So just to clear this up right now, I know Justin and I are calling Zozo the Ouija demon. I don't want you to be confused and think that there's only one demon that works the Ouija board. It's just the most common demon that we've heard of and that we've come across, which is why we're calling him the Ouija demon, almost like the leader, of the demons in the Ouija board. What do you call that? I guess spectrum or area? Or,
yeah, I guess
whatever.
Be
probably be a good term to use.
I don't. There's not really a term that you could fit into there, I don't think.
Right. But with that said, there are, again, thousands of ways and thousands of demons that are waiting to make their way through the Ouija board or any other type of summoning known to man. It just so happens, as I said, that Zozo is the most popular, which is why we call him the Ouija demon. That's what he's known for, showing up through the Ouija board nowadays. And there are countless stories about this demon showing up. Now, which ones are true? Which ones are just made up? We have no clue. We don't know what's authentic. We don't know what's just, been a story to tell and get some feedback. But I think throughout the next hour or so, we are going to go ahead and talk about some of the stories and just kind of elaborate on the story and then discuss between ourselves what we think is happening here. Do we believe the story? Do we not believe the story? What did they do right? What did they do wrong? So on and so forth. I think that sound fair?
Sounds fair to me.
And then of course, we're definitely going to get into a little bit of the history of this demon. As Justin said, he was first came up in the 1800s and kind of just disappeared. But in the 1800s, if I'm not mistaken, he first showed up in 1816 when he possessed an unnamed girl from Picardy, France, who was supposedly possessed by this Zozo demon.
Right.
And that was first mentioned in, I might completely, bomb this, but Jacques Colin. Is it Jacques, really?
Yeah,
that's how you spell Jacques.
It's Jacques, Jacques Colin de Plancy.
Why? Why must you make things so difficult? Just spell like Jacques, like the way Americans spell it.
Jock.
Yes. Okay, that's completely. I'm sorry, that's wrong. You spell it the way you want. But I feel like the words that are big words that I don't understand, that most people can't always pronounce, there should be little,
this is how you
next to it. Like, this is how you pronounce it. Like, got it. But yes, what he said. That's where this story was found originally, back in 1816. From there, I don't know if there's many other stories between 1816 and the 20th century or 19th century when this thing started really showing up on the Ouija board. Anything on your end?
Everything I came across is that it was first documented in 1818 in the Dictionary Infernal, and then nothing until the 20th century when it started appearing to people using the Ouija board. And which is weird because, the Ouija board has been around for centuries. So why not until the 20th century does it decide to start using the Ouija board as its medium to go through? But right. And as you were talking, one thing that it could be too is, as you said, you're opening doorways to multiple demons and evil entities, whatever you want to call them, and it could be multiple demons using the same name as a scare factor. Right.
It is very, very possible. Absolutely. And we see that time and time again. We see demons constantly changing their names from time to time, even though it's the same demon. Of course, we don't always know it's the same demon. Right. But you find it most commonly when you're dealing with a possession, or whether that's a possession of a human or a possession of a house, if you will. I know not everyone considers a demon in the house a possession. I do. I consider it a possession of type. But when you're talking to them, you'll get certain things through. I know some people use recorders, and they'll get different names. Some people claim that those different names are all different demons. I think that's not necessarily true. I think sometimes it's just one demon who wants to scare you even more, to make you think there's multitudes of demons in the house, when really there is just one, because that's what they do. They're there to manipulate, to trick.
A lot of demons like to use the name Lucifer as well as a scare factor.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. In regards to this Zozo, this is what's really, really interesting. Throughout all of the stories that I came across, and you can agree or disagree, the one thing that I noticed that was most common is that when Zozo first appears, he doesn't appear as himself. He pretends to be somebody else, and that somebody else is usually a family member, a deceased family member, that is, or a deceased friend, a relative of some sort, in some way, some kind of relation to this person. And so there's this trickery there to get you to start talking to him. And then after a short period of time, he just, boom, hits you with it. This is Zozo. I was both of those people. I'm just kidding. I'm messing with you, blah, 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 blah. And then literally hell breaks out in your home.
The one video that I was watching, though, they didn't show much of the beginning of it, but they were doing a Ouija board session, and again, I don't know if this video is true or it was just to document what this guy was talking about. But he was showing a Ouija board session that these teenagers or whatever were doing, and it was just doing a figure eight back and forth, which again is a part of this description that they say Zozo does, is either keeps doing a figure eight or keeps doing Zo, and but they weren't saying that they were trying to contact anybody in particular. They were just asking who was there, or if somebody was there, and it did a figure eight, went to yes, and then when they asked who it was, it did a figure eight 3 times, and then just kept doing Zo, and then when they laughed at it, this girl just started convulsing and laughing at the same time. Again, don't know if it was a dramatization to tell the story, but to me it looked pretty real to me.
And the one thing that's really interesting, and I apologize for looking down away from the camera at the moment. I'm looking up a piece of scripture here for a little bit later. But the one thing, as you said, with the figure eight, something else that I noticed is this whole Zozo thing, the O to the Z to the O, back and forth. There is a theory, and of course I personally don't believe this theory. I think it's completely whack. But that if a spirit were to, or you as a person were able to go from A to Z, or from one end of the alphabet to the other, back and forth, you actually open a portal to the spirit world.
Yeah,
that's how you open it.
I did see that too, yeah.
And so we see through a lot of these stories that Zozo constantly goes Z-O, 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 back and forth over and over and over and over again. It's very repetitive. And then he gets to a point where he starts answering all questions with the same answer, because it's extremely repetitive. Now, whether or not he's really opening this portal, which I don't think demons need a portal by any means to get here. I don't think they need you to open the portal. When you start talking to them, they're there to begin with. They're all around us at all times, whether you believe it or not. They're in our homes right now listening to this conversation. That's what they do. They get to know us better than we know ourselves, literally. And so they really don't need any help to break through. All they need is for you to interact with them in some way. Just respond to them, acknowledge them, and boom, they've got you.
Yeah, and I mean, we call it opening a doorway, which, I mean, I do believe in portals, and I do believe that, I mean, those things can happen, that manifestation can happen, but when we say you're opening portals, you're opening doorways, basically what we're trying to say is that you're inviting this in. That's opening the doorway to yourself, not to a literal doorway, which, again, I said I believe in portals, I do, which could be a doorway as well.
Right.
But,
well, I'm not saying that portals don't exist. I mean, I don't think the Ouija board has any power or the demon need it necessarily, you know. Right. But you know, portals is a completely different discussion, which is something else we tend to say every single week. There's always something that we talk about that we're like, oh, it's a completely different discussion.
We do rabbit trail a lot sometimes, but I mean, to do a full show on certain things, it does link to this, but portals is as you said, a huge array of things that we can touch on a whole show. So
yeah, because you know, portals aren't always spiritual by nature.
Right.
You know, you can think of a black hole. Someone consider that a portal because there's a white hole on the other side. What's in between? We can't understand or begin to find evidence or scientifically, I don't know, like get pictures or some kind of evidence. You know, there's just we can't explain it exactly. We can't explain it. And so there's a number of different types of portals out there. I remember when Justin and we used to go back and forth from his house or my house to the rec center, and it'd always take longer one way than it would the opposite direction every single time.
I think about that all the time.
Do you?
Yeah.
We always laugh because we're like, there must be a wormhole here. Nothing's moving faster, but the times is just much quicker. Don't know why.
No space difference
no space difference.
Distance.
Same exact road both ways. Lights sometimes are exactly the same. You know, sometimes they're always green, sometimes they're always red, but it's always quicker coming back.
Yeah.
Don't know why. Just don't know why. It's mind-boggling.
Yeah. So back to Zozo.
Yes.
So, like I said, the one thing that came to mind, and this has actually come to mind a couple of times when I was researching this, is the multiple demons using the name Zozo for a scare factor, because of there being one documentation already. So what's going to stop demons from using that name? Because one particular demon used that name and scared somebody so badly, did a particular set of things, which, I mean, as you said, demons are always watching, so they saw what it did and just repeat it. So that's one factor that came to mind when I was doing the research in this. Nowhere in the research does it point to multiple demons, but, I mean, truly, how are they going to point to multiple demons if they don't know?
Right.
So, a couple of the key factors, as we talked about just a few seconds ago here, is, as I said, it does a figure eight several times. It keeps doing the Z-O-Z-O-Z-O. One thing that I did not mention in there is it does an inverted Z. And it does mention, as well as you said, if you can go to A to Z or backwards Z to A, you open this portal supposedly to this entity, demon, whatever you guys want to call it, because it gives multiple names as we're doing the research here. Some say complicated entity, some say demonic force, some say demon. Basically all the same thing if you think about it, but I'm trying to see if there's anything else. Some say that, I mean, it's difficult. It says it's difficult to tell which stories about Zozo are authentic and which ones are nothing more than urban legend, because this thing has got a urban legend type following that's happening.
Right. Well, but still, what's interesting is 1816 was when it first appeared, okay? And that wasn't through a Ouija board. That was a story that was written down in 1816 about this little girl that was possessed. From what I could tell, there's nothing after that, right? And then the Ouija board comes out, and suddenly out of nowhere, boom, Zozo shows up.
Yeah.
Now, is it possible that somebody came across the original story from 1816 and was like, oh, this is kind of interesting, let's spread this some more through the Ouija board, pretend it's all from the Ouija board? Yes, it's possible, it's probable. On the other hand, is it likely that this demon really did possess this girl, and then when the Ouija board came out, decided, hey, here's a way that I can possess a bunch of people, or really just, trick and mess with a lot of people and really scare them? That too, I think, is extremely possible. I know Justin and I have said this many times on the show. When something is faked and the story gets around, people start to believe it's real, eventually that story becomes real.
Yeah.
It becomes a true story after a while. And I know there's a lot of people out there who will disagree. I know there's a story that I read from skeptophilia.com of a guy who wouldn't agree with my statement there, that taking something that isn't real can become real just based on how we view it. But I really truly believe it can become real, especially when demons realize how much fear is in the Zozo character. They can take it, manipulate it, and make it their own, just like that. Piece of cake. So that's just something.
When you have a mass of people either trying to contact this thing or believing in it in a Ouija board session, because there are times that there's 3, 4, or 5 people, all of which have probably heard that name, and just bring it into existence, whether that's the demon, the original Zozo demon that possessed the girl in 1816, or just a demon that decides to use that name.
Right. Well, and Zozo is so popular. Now, the first place that I learned about this Zozo demon was on an episode of Ghost Adventures. Some people out there, some of you might like watching Ghost Adventures. Some of you might think it's fake. I know a lot of ghost hunting shows out there have been faked over the past year. Ghost Hunters being one of them. I actually caught one of the guys on Ghost Hunters faking evidence. And to me, it's pretty clear. I showed a couple other people, and they saw it as well once I pointed it out. Personally, I like Ghost Adventures, whether or not the actual documentation of whatever they're investigating is real or not. Whether the noises or the voices that we hear are real, doesn't matter to me. I really like their documentary style, the documentary style that they use in promoting their shows. And pretty much the first half of the episode, when it's telling us a story of what they're looking for or what's going on in this place, I just enjoy the story. However, there's an episode from Season 10, Episode 3, called Zozo Demon. And you can actually look it up online. You can just type in Ghost Adventures Zozo Demon, or Season 10, Episode 3 of Ghost Adventures, or just, something like that. And you can see the clip. There's actually a full episode that you can watch. It's 41.5 minutes long. There's also a smaller episode, I believe, from travelchannel.com, which is Travel Channel is where Ghost Adventures broadcasts from. And I don't know how long that one is, but it'll show you the actual lockdown and this interaction that they have with Zozo when using the Ouija board. Again, whether or not it's real, I don't know. You check it out, decipher it for yourself, but it gives you an idea, at least, of what people are claiming to go through. Because, again, it's just this constant back and forth motion with the Z to the O.
Right.
And there's this constant similarity of the atmosphere around these people using the Ouija board, in which the atmosphere gets really thick and heavy and dark. Some people will say it gets darker than dark. It's hard to explain darker than dark, but I know I've seen it before. I'm pretty sure Justin has seen it before, this darker than dark. But yeah, if you're interested, check it out. It'll give you an idea of what we're talking about, this demon.
Which the heaviness and the darker than dark is always a common thing when, again, you call it evil entity, you call it demon, whatever you call it, that's a common factor. I mean,
right.
I have, as you said, we've watched numerous Ghost Hunters, Ghost Adventures. I've even caught a Ghost Lab here and there and a couple of others. And, I mean, I would pinpoint a time that you hear them say, wow, it's really heavy in here. Mm-hmm. Manifestation of whatever you guys want to call it. But, it's one of those things that you can't even describe it until you've been through it. So,
right.
All right, folks, I think we're going to take our first break here. We are going to hear Eric's Random Fact of the Day, and we will be right back with Paratruth Radio right here on the Paratruth Radio Network.
Now, Eric's Random Fact of the Day.
Did you know that you should at least keep your toothbrush 6 feet away from the toilet? According to cs.cmu.edu, dentists have recommended that a toothbrush be kept at least 6 feet away, or 2 meters, from a toilet to avoid airborne particles, which result from flushing.
This was Eric's Random Fact of the Day.
All right, folks, welcome back to Paratruth Radio right here on PTRN. My name is Justin.
And I'm Eric.
And we've been discussing the Zozo enigma that goes along with the Ouija board. You can call it a demon because, as far as I've seen, that's exactly what it is. The one thing that I was actually talking to our friend Heidi from Talk Supernatural and telling her, we were going to do the show on Zozo. And she had actually even mentioned that when she was younger, she had a Zozo incident using a Ouija board. And she didn't go into too much detail other than the fact that it literally scared the crap out of her, which I didn't push it. I'm like, you don't have to say anything more. I would be uncomfortable telling those stories just because as you're talking about these things, you can bring them on to you. So I completely get it. Mm-hmm. But just the fact that it hits home that a friend has had this happen. Mm-hmm. So it is this thing that is going around, and it's actually become more and more common as the years have gone by, as we get closer and closer to what a lot of cultures are calling the end times. I mean, it's not just Christianity that is saying that we are coming close to the end times. There's a lot of religions that are saying that. But, I mean, more and more often, entities, whatever you guys call them, demons, I mean, we've covered numerous things that you can call demons from 2009 when we did Night Stalkers to now, and it's just progressing faster and faster where these things are popping up. So this Zozo's demon, in your opinion, like, is it noticing that we're getting closer and closer to the end times to you, and that's why it's speeding up? Is it just because the Ouija board's become more popular and people are opening their minds more to what people call psychic phenomenon, or the occult or paranormal? What's your ideas there?
I think I'm going to go with number 2. I think that the Ouija board is just becoming more and more popular still, and it's continuing to gain popularity, and people are opening their mind to the spirits and to the spirit world, and so they're more easily allowing these demons to have access to themselves, to their homes, to their friends and their family, etc., etc. The only reason I don't think it's necessarily due to the end times is because I think Satan, as he has done for thousands of years, is going to still try to keep it all pretty low key. He's still going to trick people, carefully, because it's the end times. If he's too hard, if he comes out too strong, people are going to be like, oh, if there is a devil, there must be a God, and they're going to turn to God. And once they turn to Jesus, the devil loses grasp. He has nothing on them. So he's definitely going to want to keep his works as secretive as possible and slowly manipulate people. So I don't think that's the problem here. I think this just happens to be a demon who has a lot of pride, who enjoys scaring the crap out of people. There's some demons who like scaring. There's some demons who like to manipulate under or in the shadows, if you will. It just depends on the demon itself. And I think this one, it just happens to be that he's able to scare more people. He's able to do that. And you know what? A lot of these people, they're they'll meet a demon, they'll encounter a demon, and they still won't turn to God for help because that's how hardened their hearts are. They would much rather deal with the demon possessing and harassing and manipulating and so on and so forth than have to turn to God and give their life over to Him. So, unfortunately, it's sad to say that that's how these people think, but, he's getting away with it. Zozo's getting away with it. He knows what he can do, how far he can push, and nothing's going to happen to him. No one's going to shut it out. So, I think that's the problem. I think people are just more in tune, and there's a growing popularity with the Ouija board and just with wanting to interact with these spiritual beings.
Yeah, and I mean, there's really no debate for me on this because there's nowhere stating that it can be anything other than some type of dark demonic entity. I mean, I can't say that, it could be a ghost. Mm-hmm. Well, if you believe in human spirits, which I do, but in most cases, when you think of people talking about human spirits, there's no torment there. There's just interaction, which in Christian cases it's just a deception by demons. So in this particular instance, as we started talking about at the beginning, like there are cases where, like this one here on Strange Dimensions, that says it was her father who had passed. We were testing the spirit, asking questions that only she knew the answer to, which, by the way, folks, when the Bible says test the spirits, it doesn't mean ask it questions that you would only know. It means test it with biblical scripture. But this person is saying testing the spirit as in, do you know what happened 20 years ago to me when I fell down the stairs and what happened? That's what they're saying that they were talking about. And it says, right. After 20 minutes, it switched over and claimed to be my mother, once again answering questions correctly. We were both in tears, and before we knew it, the spirit switched over again, and we asked who we were talking to. The pointer went O-Z, 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 O. We called him Oz. We asked him to blow out a candle to prove himself, and before we completed the sentence, the candle was out. We asked him the time. Neither of us had watches, and we had been outside for over an hour, and we ran inside to look, and it was exactly to the minute. He then proceeded to tell us that it was him the whole time, not her father, not my mother, him. He said he knew what we were thinking, and that's how he gave us the answers to our questions. He was in our heads. So from that story, and we've talked about this before, do you think demons can read our thoughts and use that to their advantage, or is it something that they've seen in time and are using it that way?
Well, to answer your first question, whether or not they can get in our heads, the answer is absolutely not. Actually, back on Forgotten Truth Radio, I did an entire episode just on whether or not Satan can read our minds. It's probably one of the most interesting episodes I think that I had done at the time. I had a lot of interaction from people. Demons are, this whole idea of like an angel on one shoulder, a demon on the other, or the devil on the other, and you have this good and bad side. Well, in a sense, that's kind of correct. I do believe in a way that there are guardian angels. I believe that there are angels that God sends to guard us and to watch over us. However, I think the demons are a little more pushy, if you will. They allow themselves to be more known, and they do go out of their way to understand absolutely everything about us that they can. And that means our entire family history. All of our history with our friends, beginning to end, from the day we're born to the day we die, and beyond that. They know our great-great-great-great-great-great-great-grandparents extremely well. Now, they never knew that we were going to be here back then, but as time went on, they just slowly were able to understand us to such a T that they are absolutely able to answer any questions we throw at them. Even if we ask them to to tell us something that only we would know, that only we should know, they could answer it because they know it too. They were there when it happened. They can predict the future in a sense. They can't literally predict the future. The only thing they know about the future is that Jesus is going to come back and that they're all going to be thrown into hell. They know it. It's absolutely true. They know that Jesus is God and they fear him. All right? And that's based on Scripture. They tremble by the name of God.
Well, with you bringing that up, it kind of ties to what some things are being said about this Zozo demon. Is a couple of instances it's told people how they were going to die. Do you think that, again, and this is way out there into left field here, do you think since time is kind of not as linear as we think, that they have seen it in the timeline that we are in, and that, because they can go into the future and into the past and into the present? Or do you think it's just they're just guessing?
No, it's absolutely guessing. Demons and Satan cannot go into the past or into the future or into the present. Only God is omnipresent. That's scripturally based. Only God is everywhere at all times. He knows the beginning and the end. That's why the scripture is able to predict so much, because God knows what's going to happen at the end. He knows everything about us, which goes along with the whole idea as to whether or not Satan can read our minds. In 1 Kings chapter 8, verse 39, it says, then hear, I'm going to switch to a different one. It says, then hear from heaven, your dwelling place. Forgive and act with everyone according to all they do, since you know their hearts, for you alone know every human heart. And that is very clear. It's telling us that God alone, God himself only God knows the human heart. That can be read as the same way as he can read our minds. God knows us. We see the same thing through the New Testament. Jesus is capable of reading people's minds. We see it over again. Not once did a demon read anyone's mind. No one's ever been able to do it. Only Jesus and God can read everybody. He knows everything. He is all. He is in all. And so God is also omnipresent, which means he's everywhere at one time, and Satan is not. He can only be in one place at one time. He can't be there at your place and here at the same time. He can't. He has to be here or there or somewhere else. Personally, I think he's over in the Iraq area, Iran, working with ISIS. I think he has a much bigger plate, that he's working with. He's looking toward the end times. He still thinks, beside what he knows, beside what the scriptures tell us, beside what God has told all of us and him, he thinks that he can still beat Jesus in the end. He thinks he can still take the throne of God and win supreme. That's because of pride. Because of that pride, that's who he is. He still thinks that he's going to be able to manipulate everybody and win. He's not. It's already been determined. The moment that Jesus was the moment that Satan lost. And the moment he rose was the moment that we won, that he won, Jesus won. And I think that's just something a lot of people don't quite understand and can't begin to fathom. And I think once you begin to read the scriptures and understand them more intimately, that's when it all makes sense. It all kind of comes together. But yeah, that was a long answer for a short answer for a question that should have been a short answer. But
do you think if, like, for example, somebody's using a Ouija board and they ask, "How am I going to die?" Do you think the demon can cause that particular thing that they say to happen? Like, as far as, like, for example, the one thing was that a guy asked Zozo how he was going to die, and he said car accident alone at night. Do you think Zozo could have caused that car accident to happen?
There's a lot of debate here. This is where it starts getting a little wishy-washy, and there's going to be people who agree and disagree with me, Christians, and this is probably a good one to get some of our friends in on to get their views as well. According to Scripture, when you look at the book of Job, Satan had to get permission to afflict Job with anything. God would often say, yes, you can do this to Job, but you can't do that. You can make him sick, but you can't kill his family and livestock. Okay, you can kill his livestock and his children and so on and so forth, but you can't kill him. You can't hurt him, God always gave him the okay. He needed permission. And it's safe to believe that Satan still needs permission today to afflict people that are Christians. True people know Jesus Christ as Lord. On the other hand, and this is agreement, I think Satan has to afflict people who don't know the Lord, who don't believe Jesus should be open to any accept. And I think Satan has a little more leeway there, and possibly. Now, I don't know the full. I can't say 100% whether or not that's true. Whether Satan can just go out and kill somebody at random. I've heard stories. Again, that's something that walks the line. Usually, into existence. So, how someone dies, whether or not that was Satan, who knows? I mean, it's possible. It just depends. Can't say for sure.
I'm a firm believer that, if they're asking this creature to tell them how they died, and they see what it answers, that not the demon, but they themselves caused the thing that kills them, because they're constantly thinking, oh my God.
It's in their head.
Right. So,
Yeah, I could see that.
I'm going to die in a car accident. I'm going to die in a car accident. Well, all of a sudden, I'm not paying attention for a second. I just caused my own car accident and killed myself because I was thinking about what this demon told me a year and a half, 2 years ago. So I think that's a big factor in it.
Yeah.
The jury's still out for me. I don't know what I believe as far as if demons can cause it or not, but it's just something that kind of crossed my mind, because they're telling these people, hey, this is how you're going to die, and that's actually how they die. I mean, is it coincidence? Sure, it's a possibility it's just coincidence as well. Or, again, like I asked you, they're guessing, and, it coincidentally turns out they were right. So,
right. Well, and you got to know that it is very possible that demons or Satan can give very accurate guesses. Okay, they can be extremely accurate on just a simple guess or prediction, if you will. They can't literally predict the future, but they can almost seem as if they're predicting it, because they know us so well, and they see just the way we live our lives, that they can almost perfectly and accurately tell us how we're going to die. When you're talking to somebody who's this is way out in left field, but just for example, you're talking to someone who is what was I going to say? Someone who's on drugs all the time, who's a drug addict. All right, and they've been on and off for years. More times on than off. Maybe they're off for a week or so, then boom, right back on. It's safe to say that eventually, somewhere down the line, this person could end up dying from their addiction. They overdose, they get mixed up with the wrong people, so on and so forth. We can accurately say that. And so it's the same thing with demons, only they know us so much more intimately than we even know ourselves, that they can almost sometimes perfectly and accurately tell our future. It seems like they're telling our future as if they can actually see it, but no, they're just accurately guessing very well. One story I'm going to jump back on is this idea. Do you know who Robert Johnson is? Old blues musician.
The name sounds familiar. I'd have to see a picture or hear a song, but yeah.
All right, so there's this blues magician who named Robert Johnson, who supposedly went to a crossroads and sold his soul to the devil. In return, he was to become one of the best blues players ever. Okay, so after he did this, sure enough, he became a pretty darn good blues player. You can listen to some of his old stuff. There's nothing that's like as clear as we get today music-wise.
Right.
But some of his old recordings you can listen to, and it's good music. However, after a couple of years, don't quote me, I can't remember exactly how many years it was, but after so many years, he began singing songs about hellhounds on his trail and about how the devil's out to get him and so on and so forth. And he started telling stories about how he sold his soul and that one day the devil was going to get him. They're going to kill him. Okay. And sure enough, he died at a young age. He died in his 20s, if I'm not mistaken.
Wow.
Right before his career took off. So the devil came in on part. He made him a good, musician, but he wasn't up at top like he could have been. The devil snatched it from under him by killing him, supposedly, when his time was up. They had this deal. Now, whether or not there really was a deal here, whether or not people can really make a deal with the devil, again, folklore starts moving into here, different opinions and views come into this. This is one of those things that, again, is a completely different discussion. But it kind of just goes to show that perhaps the devil can take a life if indeed he has the okay or the permission from either God when it comes to a Christian or from a person or I can't go. I'm not even going to bother going on because I'll just stumble over myself because I can't fully fathom it or understand it. But again, maybe this is something that you and I have to bring up to some of our other friends, our Christian friends who might have a view as well, or even non-Christian who might have a view as well. Because this is something I can't answer on my own. But
through any of the accounts that you saw on Zozo, did you ever see any of them? Any accounts of him possessing somebody after or during the Ouija board session? Which, I mean, some people will debate that a Ouija board session, you're summoning a demon and it's possessing you or oppressing you, depending on how you look at it. But was there any physical possession as far as you saw, other than 1816?
So there's a number of people who claim to have been possessed in these stories. I would start to gather maybe they're possessed in a sense. Maybe they're just what's the word I'm looking for?
Obsessed?
Not them being not oppressed, like being oppressed in a way.
Okay.
Being oppressed in such a way that it almost seems as if the demon is working through them. They're not actually inside of the person, the demon, but instead the demon is working through them. And there's a bunch of stories like that. One story in particular is a story that I found on yourghoststories.com. Again, don't know if this is a true story or not. But it's about a young girl named April. She's 21 years old. She had never really used a Ouija board, but she had one, and she moved in with her sister, and they had a few friends over. They decided to mess with this Ouija board a bit. And basically, her friends who didn't really believe in, contacting spirits started to witness things that just probably they didn't expect. And let's say that. Things really got out of hand quick, okay? It got to a point where things were going so crazy that one of the girls went out of their way to curse this demon. They cussed at Zozo. And, of course, this April girl got really freaked out, like, you don't know what he's capable of. Why would you say that, Well, it gets to a point where Zozo starts going crazy, as we've talked about. And one of the things that they had asked was, is anyone there? And of course, the cursor moved slowly to yes. And why they would ask if anyone is there, I think this is later on in the night, if I'm not mistaken. But they asked, is anyone there? And the cursor slowly moved to yes. And she asked, who are we speaking with? And the cursor repeatedly went from Z to O. Z to O, Z to O, Z to O. And then she asked, what do you want? And it quickly spelled out her. Of course, they go on to ask, well, who is her? And she asked this spirit to spell out the name of who her is. And all it wrote out was the name of one of the friends that was there with her. And so April asked, what do you want with her? And all he spelled out again was, I want her. And he did this over and over again. I want her, I want her, I want her. They never really understood what it was he wanted or why he wanted her and so on and so forth. Well, April got a little upset and stupidly called him a cat. Okay, I'm going to say cat, C-A-T. You guys know what I'm talking about. So, bad word. And, of course, that's when things really went kind of...
For a second, I thought you literally meant she called him a cat. So
A cat? No.
It took you prompting what
Yeah.
what she said.
But I saw it on your face, though, when it clicked.
Yeah.
So anyway, things got bad. She got angry. Oh, that was a friend. I'm sorry, that was a friend who called this thing a cat. So she got angry, told her not to, provoke this thing. And it wasn't long before they were using the cursor, and the cursor got extremely hot. Now, I was telling you, Justin, earlier, this is weird because when me and my sisters were young, we were using a Ouija board, and again, which is weird here, the cursor got really hot, and we had to pull away from the cursor, and we never played with the Ouija board ever again because that was just really strange. Could it be a coincidence? Sure. Could it be the same demon? Possibly. Could it just be something that demons do? I don't know.
The way they manifest, yeah. That could
just
be
a trick in the book. I don't know. Well, it started getting hot. This Zozo started spelling out mama, which apparently is another word that's associated with Zozo, something that he uses. And basically, the one friend, and we'll see what you think. I want to see your reaction here. The one friend decided to take his hand off the cursor and refused to play anymore. And of course, what happened when he took his hand off the cursor without saying goodbye or doing it the correct way? The atmosphere immediately changed. Got extremely dark. Got extremely heavy. All of a sudden, this girl goes on to say that she could feel Zozo in the room. The air was heavy. She began to get scared. All of a sudden, she didn't feel like herself, and it felt as if something was inside of her. She felt the most intense hatred she's ever felt before. Very common with people who are inflicted by demons. She began to laugh hysterically and then cry like she had no control over her emotions. Her mood then changed to hatred again, and she turned to look at her friend, the one that the demon wanted, and with the most evil smile that she could have possibly ever made. She felt that the demon inside was the one smiling. Like she had no control over its smile, as if something took over and smiled. They all stopped playing the board at that moment, but felt the heavy feeling in the air, and the presence of the demon remain for quite a while, several hours throughout the night, and it just disappeared. And that was it. That was the last time they ever felt anything from Zozo or witnessed this experience again. They haven't played with the Ouija board ever since. So with that last part there of how her moods were changing and how she had this smile and these different thoughts, you can call that a possession in a way. I think it's more oppression or affliction even. I think it's more oppression because demons are very capable of putting thoughts in our minds. They're capable of making us think things we don't normally think. They're capable of persuading us to do things in a way that we don't think we're really doing on our own. It's just a way that they're able to trick us. But that is one example of a so-called possession that I came across in regards to these stories.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't come across anything that said possession or anything like that, or I didn't even come across that story. So I was just curious because, the only one that I came across was the original one in 1816. Mm-hmm. And just to show you guys too how popular this thing is becoming, this demon, this entity known as Zozo. It was made into a movie called I Am Zozo. I believe it was 2012. Correct me if I'm wrong.
I believe so.
So, just like, look, for example, they're making a show called Lucifer. They have this movie called I Am Zozo. They've got numerous movies out where it's based on possession and hauntings and that sort of thing. There's
a movie that came out this past year, 2015, called Ouija.
Oh, right. Yeah, I did see that one.
That came out around Halloween.
Yeah. So yeah, it's a really interesting stuff here, and I don't like covering it too much, and I'm sure Eric feels the same way because, as we said, you can bring this stuff onto yourself, and it's just something that I felt needed to be covered because it is becoming more and more common, like I said, I had never heard the name until listening to a podcast, and somebody brought the name up, and I'm like,
oh. Yeah, well, on top of that, I think it's very important that we, as Christians, need to talk about this, because that's something a lot of Christians don't do. Even a lot of churches won't cover the history of demons or Satan. They won't talk about Satanology and demonology and so on and so forth with us. They won't tell us about spiritual battles. They won't talk to us about the war that's going on. They're too afraid because of the fact that there is a possibility of manifesting these spirits, these evil spirits. And so a lot of people stay away from it. It should always be about God. And I agree. It should always be about God. It should always be about Jesus. But we really need to teach people about these demons that are out there, because if we don't know about them, when they do show up, we're going to be screwed, because we're not going to know what to do. Yeah. The one thing I wanted to mention a while ago, which I should have cut you off. I didn't want to cut you off, so I decided not to. But you had mentioned in one of the stories about the spirit, or about somebody testing these spirits in a way by having them answer questions, right? Well, sure enough, like you had said, testing the spirits is done completely differently. It has nothing to do with answering questions and seeing if they know anything of your personal history. That's not how you do it. According to 1 John chapter 4 verse 1, John says, "Dear friends, do not believe every spirit, but test the spirits to see whether they are from God, because many false prophets have gone out into the world." The key words here is to test them to see if they are from God. How do you do that? One of the most simple ways, which John tells us in verse 2, is by this you know the Spirit of God. Every spirit that confesses that Jesus Christ has come in the flesh is from God. Any spirit that doesn't confess that is of the Antichrist, or is of the devil. And so that's really important. The only question you need to ask is, do you believe that Jesus Christ has come in the flesh? And do you believe that he died and rose again for our sins? If the spirit answers yes, this is careful. This is something you need to have discernment for, by the way. Because just because a spirit says yes doesn't mean that it's telling the truth. It doesn't mean that it's let me rephrase that. It doesn't mean that it's a good spirit. Okay? Again, I had also already mentioned at the beginning of the show, demons know the Lord, for even they believe in God. Okay? They believe in him. They know who he is. So they could say, if it's a strong enough demon, yes, I believe he did rise. Or yes, I believe he did come in the flesh. And yes, I believe he did die on the cross. And they'll trick you right there, because then all of a sudden you open that door. There's something you need to have a lot of discernment in. Discernment doesn't mean to turn to mediums. It doesn't mean you're capable of talking to spirits or anything like that. Discernment simply means you're able to understand where a spirit is coming from. You can tell in a way whether or not there's a demon there. Okay? At least that's in my personal belief. I think that's what discernment means. I was gifted with the gift of discernment when I became saved. When I walk into a room, I can tell usually if there's an evil presence there. Doesn't mean I can communicate with the demon one-on-one. I can't hear it in my mind. I can't talk to dead people or anything like that. But I can just tell physically and spiritually, is that this is spirit, that Holy Spirit that moves, whether or not there's something there. So again, it's something you got to be very careful on. But yeah, you test to see if they are of God by asking if the spirit, or if this particular spirit believes that the Christ had come in the flesh. But with that said, I know this is a lot of information to be covering. I know. Yeah. It's crazy. But with that said, we do need to take our second break here, folks. You are listening to the Paratruth Radio on the Paratruth Radio Network. We will be right back, and I'd like you to just take a moment, sit back, relax, and check out Justin's Paranormal Headlines. And now, Paratruth Radio's Paranormal Headlines.
How's it going, Parafans? Justin here with your paranormal headlines. These headlines are from IndustryTap.com. NASA's new Vasimer plasma engine could reach Mars in 39 days. NASA recently provided $10 million in funding to Ad Astra Rocket Company of Texas for further development of its Variable Specific Impulse Magnetoplasma rocket, Vasimer, an electromagnetic thruster capable of propelling a spaceship to Mars in just 39 days. NASA's funding was part of the 12 Next Space Technologies for Exploration Partnership. Ad Astra's rocket will travel 10 times faster than today's chemical rockets while using 1/10 the amount of fuel. The Vasimer system would cut the trip to Mars by months, according to Franklin Chang Diaz, a former MIT student, NASA astronaut, and now CEO of Ad Astra. According to Diaz, this is like no other rocket that you may have seen in the past. It is a plasma rocket. The Vasimer rocket is not used for launching things. It is used for things already in orbit. This is called in-space propulsion. Vasimer heats plasma, an electrically charged gas, to extremely high temperatures using radio waves. The system then provides thrust by funneling the hot plasma out of the back of the engine. According to Diaz, Vasimer will save thousands of gallons of rocket fuel and tens of millions of dollars a year. And this has been Justin with your Paranormal Headlines.
This was a segment of Paratruth Radio's Paranormal Headlines.
What's up, folks? Welcome back. My name is Eric.
And I'm Justin.
And you're listening to Paratruth Radio on the one and only Paratruth Radio Network. Have a bit of glitches here tonight.
Yeah.
Speaking about the Zozo character, you know, sometimes demons don't want the word spread about who they are or what they do. But that's just comes with the field of work, I suppose. Got to deal with it. They got to deal with it. I should say, we don't have to. They do. I feel the Lord is with us, so we're good. You know, I think we've pretty much wrapped up Zozo to a T. I think as much information as there is, you know, really, if you're truly interested, you can jump online and just type in the word Zozo, and it'll give you articles about what this creature is. Now, I only recommend this to people who really are strong spiritually in the Lord. If you're not, be prepared. Even if you are, be prepared that there is a possibility in which a demon will start to show up and manifest itself. It's just what happens when you open doors. You have to be extremely careful, have a lot of discernment, and pray consistently, okay? But there's nothing wrong with understanding what's going on in the world today. So if you're interested, you know, just word Zozo.
Nothing wrong with research in general. Just I agree.
Gotta be careful
with it. You gotta make sure that you are protecting yourself, and by that I mean exactly what Eric's saying. Have your beliefs strong, and I mean be ready too. I mean it's going to happen because you're doing the research that something might try and test you or even attack you. I'll go as far as to say that. So I do encourage you guys to try and be in contact with us. We do love hearing from you guys. You guys can hop in our chat room at ptrnetwork.com, and you can find us on Facebook. You can find us on Twitter. The entire PTRN or Paratruth Radio Network. You can find both shows on Facebook and Twitter, as well as Google+. I did want to share a quick email, and I do encourage you guys to do an email to us as well. And this was from Chris McKenney. He was actually following up on on the show we did on the Goat Man, and he had said that he had actually seen the Goat Man when he was younger, corroborated by his teacher, who had also seen something out the window and started to rush everybody inside. So, and this was in Beltsville, Maryland. Culvert County, which is around the Beltsville area, which is, I believe, where one of the researches we were looking at.
It seems like that's where the Goatman story originated, was Beltsville.
So Chris, thank you so much for emailing us with that and just telling us that the research that we found was actually very correct as far as this thing actually being out there. Again, just because he saw it doesn't mean it's a true creature, not necessarily, but with him and then somebody else that was a teacher, an authority figure seeing it, I believe they all saw what they would call the Goat Man. So,
right.
And Chris, thanks so much, and I do encourage you guys, all of you guys, to email us with any thoughts, questions, concerns, show ideas as far as us doing topics. We do have the network now. If you guys have an idea for a podcast show that you'd want to pitch to us, again, go ahead, email us. You can go to ptrnetwork.com, just click on the contact, and that will go straight to us, to our network email. So do encourage you guys to get in contact with us and just interact. I love hearing from you guys. So.
Absolutely. And just a quick reminder, I know we mentioned this, I think, a week ago or a couple weeks ago, or maybe we haven't mentioned it yet. We are considering talking about a couple of things here and there, a couple of topics that aren't necessarily paranormal related. That's something we're thinking of starting to do. So if you do have any topics you'd like us to talk about that isn't paranormal related, feel free to drop us a line. We'd love to hear it, and we'll see. Maybe it's something we can discuss. But we decided to just broaden our topics a little bit more other than just the paranormal. But I'm confident that the paranormal is definitely going to be our foundation, if you will, when it comes to the way we run the show. This basically going to be our
go-to.
Yes, our go-to is going to be the paranormal stuff.
Yeah,
because we do enjoy talking about it and letting you guys know about the current situations in history.
Can link to paranormal, even though it's a separate topic. Like next week, we have Eric's friend Louis Guthrie on to talk about his movie Lady in White. Yes, it's a paranormal movie, but it's something other than the paranormal. It's about an actual film short film that's coming out around the same time that The Revealed is coming out, I believe. Correct? Mm-hmm. So
right around May, and if I'm mistaken, there'll be two versions: a family-friendly version, if you will, and a not-so-family-friendly version of that film. And of course, you'll tell us a lot more about that later. That's a film that I worked on. It was a film that I was a camera assistant as well as Steadicam operator. So it's going to be a fun discussion and interview with my buddy Lewis. I know he's super psyched. The moment I told him, I think 2 or 3 weeks ago, I told him, he had posted it on his Facebook,
on the
boom,
Paratruth bandwagon to get it going out there.
He was on it like white on rice, man. So we got that coming up, and the next week, Justin.
The week after that, we are going to be talking to Scott Ramsey about the Aztec UFO incident. It's actually one that happened before Roswell, but it is way less known. So I do encourage you guys to check that out as well.
Yeah.
Eric and I have covered UFO and extraterrestrial several times on Paratruth. I don't think we'll ever come to a different conclusion than we already have, but it's interesting to get the different accounts, if you will.
Right. Absolutely.
To hear the truths out there.
It's an interesting topic. Aliens are always interesting.
Well, yeah, interesting and weird all at the same time. So on that note, folks, I think that's all we got for you. I do encourage you guys to check out Thai Girl for God Radio, since she is on the Paratruth Radio Network, and she does it every other week, whereas we do it weekly. And I believe it's this coming Wednesday she will have another one out. I'm pretty sure, because she didn't have one this past week. So this coming Wednesday she will have another show out for you guys, so definitely check that out, as well as Paratruth Radio right here on the Paratruth Radio Network.
So folks, Thai Girl for God Radio part of the PTRN network. Of course, us, Paratruth Radio, every Sunday, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. If you liked this episode tonight, check out some of our past episodes. If you like those episodes as well, stay tuned for next week's episode. Until then, my name is Eric.
And I'm Justin.
And we'll see you next week. Peace. If you enjoyed this episode of Paratruth Radio, and you would like to listen to it again, or are interested in listening to any of our past episodes, then you can listen to them on HD at our website, paratruthradio.com.
And you can also find us at Stitcher, Blueberry, TuneIn, iTunes, Spreaker, and YouTube.
And of course, like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter for brand new updates of our show every day.